Yes, we will spend some minutes describing fish tanks from some project we had in Southern Latium. But before all, I would like to spend a few seconds on some notes that, as an archaeologist, I would like to share with you in the field of the interpretation of this kind of structures. Many of these points have been already highlighted by Marco in his presentation, but just remember, when you approach a fish tank from an archaeological, from an water archaeology point of view, consider this. That was just some reflection coming to the Congress. First one, depth. We are here to consider the depth, to consider the measurements as a marker for the relative sea level change. But at the same time, depth is the key for everything. If you take correct measurements, and this is the first point, if we do not know what we have to measure, we will continue to publish numbers that will make an influential, will modify our perception of the Mediterranean, giving bad numbers. And at the same time, if you do not adapt your measurements to your needs, we continue with numbers that are the result of the will of the authors that want to find evidences for their interpretation. This is obviously the same thing with everything in the ancient world, with epigraphy, with everything. We try to change datation according to what we want to find out. But when we are dealing with something objective, like a number of a measurement, this is very strong. And if you consider also that a measurement can also exclude our interpretation. Why am I telling so? Because, for example, one of the fish ponds I will present today is not a fish pond. But the result was made possible just in the consideration, just when we arrived to consider the sea level change, and we arrived to the conclusion that it was not possible to consider this as a fish pond. At the same time, not every part of a fish pond is underwater, and we have always to consider which part can be submerged and at what stage. And at the same time, a well-trained eye will distinguish the different elements that are our diagnostic elements, the crepidine, the sluice gates, the cataract, the original seabed, the decorative elements. But at the same time, we have to remark in our consideration the effects of the decay on the ancient structures. Because sometimes our measurements will change a lot, just considering how many centimeters of the crepido, of the sluice gate, we lost. Human structures last centuries. We take a Roman fish pond, but a Roman fish pond can have a life of 5 centuries, with different moments, with different phases, with phases of abandonment, with phases of reconstruction, with phases of refurbishing, with changes in the position of the sluice gate, with the exclusion of the ancient channels. It's a long structure. These are structures with a long life. And yes, literary resources are great, but this is something produced by humans, and human structures have their own variations. If we continue to find, to look for the measurements given by Columella in every fish pond, we will continue to be frustrated, because we will never find the exact measurements given to us by the ancient sources. Because a fish pond is the result of engineering, of the capacity of the architects, and of the interaction with the original landscape. I will present some cases coming from a project we carried on in 2013, 2017 in the Southern Latium, when I was at the University of Naples Orientale. Now I am at the Scuola Superiore Meridionale, same city, different university. In that period, we decided to work on submerged structures, especially on the Ville Marittime, because we noticed that there was a real problem of documentation of the underwater structures. Even in the well-known ville, there was a complete absence of documentation for the submerged part, and that was not an abyss, it was 1 meter of water. There was lack of coordination between the researchers on the land and on the sea. There was a need of working quickly because of the erosion, because of the effect of the sea, because of the degradation of the decay in course and the exposure to the impact. But coming quickly, because the time is not a lot, we decided to approach different Roman villas. The first one was Gianola. Gianola is a very big late Republican villa that we date back to the end of the 2nd century before Christ in its first phase. It means that it is a villa that is part of the first generation of Roman maritime villas built on the coast of Latium. Before the Roman villas of the Gulf of Napoli, before a great part of the Roman maritime villas that we know. It is probably connected with some people related to Caesar during the half of the 1st century, but the first wall we find on the coast are probably dated to the end of the 2nd century before Christ. It's a very early one, 100 kilometers south of Rome, 100 kilometers north of Naples, with an incredible effort in the building of structures all over the coast for a length of 1 kilometer and 200 meters, with a mausoleum or very weird structures on the top of the hill, a very, very long life. Some years ago, some colleagues found statues very late, so testifying a life for the villa of more than 4 centuries. But we decided to make some work underwater, especially in the in 2 points. In the waterfront of the villa and in the fish pond during 2 campaigns. The fish pond was located in an area called the Porticciolo Romano, the Little Roman Harbour. Actually, when it was Roman, it was not a harbour. When it was an harbour, it was not Roman. It is a modern harbour built above a Roman fish pond. It is a modern harbour built with an ancient style, with a strange, almost polygonal, that probably the owner probably was influenced by the architectures of Southern Latium, but it is a very modern one. It is of the 20s of the 20th century. The first photograph of the area still show the fish pond before the construction of the harbour, with the walls of the fish pond emerging from the water. So now the effort is to find the traces of the fish pond under the modern harbour and in the bay. The best possibility to us is given by the mouth of the harbour, the entrance of the harbour, because in that point we have the section open with the superposition of the wharf, and we have docks coming with us. But above all, we found everywhere the blocks you find in every single fish pond of this type of fish ponds, the so-called sluice gates, the blocks with a mark for the gates. They were used everywhere, but they were used everywhere during the reconstruction of the harbour in the 20s of the last century. So the ancient fish pond was dismantled and the blocks were reused in the modern walls. Just a part of the blocks was thrown away in the bay, and we found a lot of these blocks underwater. 16 blocks, it means at least 8 gates. 2 of these blocks were still in situ, and that is very important for us, you know. But another one is very, very interesting. When we first approached it, it was like the mark of an anchor, but not. It is just the basis of a sluice gate, of a very big one, 2.5 meters wide, with the space for the possibility of putting an handle or some mechanism to the lifting of the gate. We do not have the blocks on the side, but we have the basis. And this basis is our best friend when we are looking for the markers of the relative sea level change in the fish pond. We also have channels of fresh water. This is very common in Roman fish ponds, you know. And we make a map of everything, finally arriving at the conclusion that the building of the modern harbour really destroyed the ancient fish pond. We have the picture, we know that the owner of the villa decided to use the harbour for a sailboat. So imagine a boat with at least 1 meter under the keel, it needs a space. So the entire bay was dredged. But a couple of a couple of sluice gates still in situ was our best marker to consider the presence of different tanks inside the same fish tank, the same fish pond, following the common way used in the fish ponds of Southern Latium, and especially in the Gulf, in the Sinus Formianus, in the Gulf of Gaeta. We arrived to estimate the area, and we noticed that the fish pond is a big one. It is not a restaurant, of course, but it is a big one. And probably, considering the chronology of the villa and the chronology of the fish pond, because we still have the walls in situ, it is also an ancient one. So probably it served as a model for the other fish pond we know in the Sinus Formianus. Depth, 1,40 m, the basis of the threshold at the entrance of the bay. 1,40 m, the basis of the sluice gates in situ. How can we have these measurements? The couple of sluice gates we still have in situ was just visible to a depth of 70 centimeters. We did not have the permission to excavate and to remove the debris. But we have all the series of the other blocks, of the other gates reused in the walls. And these blocks follow a standard of 1 meter, 1,20 m, 1,40 m. So we can imagine that if these are the big one, these blocks are 1,40 m. The ancient depth. That's a problem. If we just follow Schmidt, and Schmidt did not express itself for this fish pond, with 70 meters, we would have just 17 centimeters at the entrance of the sluice gate. But we will have to consider the immersion of the sluice gates, and this is not working for us. If we consider 1,20 m, it's still more problematic, because we have a threshold just at 20 centimeters of water. It doesn't work. And we can imagine the blocks of the sluice gates in situ emerging from 1 meter. What is the key? We do not know. We do not know. I work in the Phrygian fields, and for me to work in the Phrygian fields is easier, because we have volcanoes moving everything. And we can tell, okay, our close site, we have a change in 1 meter, but you know, we have volcanoes, they change everything. But here, how can we imagine a change so big in comparison with the other sites that are just 1 kilometer away in a stable region from a tectonic point of view? This is a problem. Again, we can imagine the long life of the plan, we can imagine the long life of the structure. We still have to really interpret the threshold at the entrance, because this is probably the relic of the big system allowing the change of salt water from the main gate towards the bay, according to the model described by the sources. But it is something that needs to work. Maybe it does not need a complete column of water, but it needs to be submerged, and submerged for at least some decades of centimeters. I leave the question open. Sperlonga, quickly, because time is running. Marco just mentioned, Sperlonga is not useful for our purposes. Why? Because the system of fish pond, that is a very, very interesting system of fish pond, it is not really directly connected with the sea level, because it is connected with the system of fresh springs coming from inside the mountain, and with the channels connecting it to the external bay, also partially covered by sediments and everything. You know the villa, you know the system, you probably know that the little islet inside was not the cenazio like it was described in the sources, but really a garden in the middle of the cave. But the nice thing, when I say we have to consider all the archaeological evidence in a fish pond, is that we have amphoras, broken amphoras, inside the walls. This is something that we know from the sources, this is something that we know from some parallels, this is something that needs to be covered by water. This is our marker of the level of water inside the fish pond. I remember that there was an article of a master of the Roman architecture, Gruppo, describing this space and describing the amphoras as the nest for ducks. Why? Probably because he was considering the possibility of these amphoras out of the water. But all the amphoras were submerged, and when the this is me drinking a Coke just to give you the exact depth of the fish pond. Because we have parallels of this, we have the ancient sources describing very well this, and we know that these are the artificial shelters for moraines. It is well described by the ancient sources, but now we also have an archaeological evidence that is very strong, and it comes from France, from the new excavation made at Narbonne, at the Capella pour la Nautique de Narbonne, where they found a very big circular fish pond excavated in the ground, in a wet ground, but on the land, with all the series of shelters from moraines and the possibility of excavating these structures in a terrestrial site and not underwater, gave the archaeologists the possibility to find out the remains of fishes. And they found out a total predominance of moraines remains inside the amphoras. This is the system, and you will notice that there is also the island inside, the artificial island inside, and there is also another detail that is very exciting for me. The little deposit at the basis of the island with a little tank separated from the rest of the tank, very small. We have exactly the same in Spelonga. We have no evidence. People wrote everything about this. This is something to put a boat when you have to arrive to the island. That is incredibly wrong. There was a little bridge for this. We have evidences of the bridge. No, that was just the little fish pond, separated fish pond for the oysters, for the shells. And again, the excavation in Narbonne gave us the remains of shells. This is the concentration of the amphoras. Just to give us one problem, very quick, I will approach this problem because the time is running. The amphoras of the moraines are not concentrated all around the fish pond, but they are concentrated in some parts, and they are completely absent in the circular fish pond, probably because the two fish ponds were separated by a sluice gate. We found the remains of the basis of the separations, probably a wooden one. And this is also connected, maybe, with the channels adding the fresh water to the basin. And we have to remember that moraines cannot be breathed in brackish water. The moraines, they want salty water with no problem. We still read people writing about the famous aquatio described by Cicero, the need of a brackish water. This is a real mistake. The Romans do not want brackish water in their fish ponds. The Romans use fresh water to temperate the salty water and to contrast the phenomenon of the augment of temperature, of the augment of salinity, and the problems of oxygenation and acidification of water. They do not want to create a lagoon for eels. They just want to have salty water like in the condition of the sea. And they need fresh water in order not to have a salt pan. 1 minute for the last one, just to tell you that it's not a fish pond. Fontania, Gaeta, a very interesting late Republican Roman villa on a bay protected by some piers still visible underwater. There was evidence of fish pond that you can see here, semicircular fish pond. In literature, it passed as part of a system of semicircular fish ponds on the bottom of the bay. No, absolutely, this is not the case. The level of the water is not suitable for the building of a fish pond. We have a threshold, but it is not a threshold for the sluice gate. It is a threshold for people walking. And it is just the entrance to a room, a semicircular room, that on the other side has the structures for the last phase of reuse of an ancient system connected with a thermal complex. This is a thermal complex on the beach. Completely different from a fish pond, absolutely. But in this case, the sea level change and our markers gave us the evidence in contrast. Last, Villacetta Formia, a very big one. Here we have good elements for the, according to the measurements. 2,90 meters, almost 3 meters of submersion in the circular fish pond, 1,70 meters in the rectangular and quadrangular fish pond. This is good. But again, the situation is completely different. We still have the channels putting fresh water into the basin, but this is an exception on all the line of fish ponds of Southern Latium. This is like the prow of a ship. This is the sumptuous effort of a man that decided to build a fish pond in a place where building a fish pond was not possible, just on the point of a promontory. And this is the result. The architectural result is exactly this one. The prow of a ship, a triangle towards the sea to contrast the waves and to keep calm water and good mass of water inside. That's all. I will stop because time is finished.